Thanks, Cobb. Thanks, everybody, for being with us on the 5th Mendocino County Fire Safe Radio program. For those of you who find them irresistibly fascinating, you can go get the first 4 on our website, which is firesafemendocino.org. Today's show is about pausing to appreciate and learn a little more about some of the people who are doing the work and sacrificing to keep our community functional and safe. This community that we've built in a wildfire-adapted environment, which we'll probably talk about a bit. We've all been thinking a lot about medical professionals a lot, and they are people who are making great sacrifices, as do law officers and a lot of others. Fire and emergency medical first responders also have our backs 24/7. And another amazing thing about them, in particular at the local level of community fire districts, is that the bulk of them are volunteers. In other words, these are people who, to some extent, are putting their own careers and their personal lives on hold to be there for you when you need them. They're your neighbors, and they go through extensive training. They put themselves out there for you, not only on fires, but medical emergencies and every other kind of disaster that comes along. And sometimes they even have to raise funds for the gear that they need to do work on top of all that. So to paint a little better picture of what they do for us and why we need to care about it, we're going to take a bit of a deep dive in with the Anderson Valley Fire District today. And to help us do that, we have Fire Chief Andres Avila and EMS Officer and Battalion Chief Clay Eubanks with us on the radio. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to them, and we didn't pick in order, but maybe we'll start with Andres. And if you could just give us a little bit about your background and how you got where you are and why you're there.
Sure. Good morning. Thanks for having us on. It's a privilege to be on with you guys. So yeah, my background is pretty simple. I had no intention of being in the fire service whatsoever. It actually came upon me as an accident. I was a young man in my 20s, early 20s. I believe I was 21, 22 when I came to Anderson Valley and started working on a local ranch. And of course, when the existing fire chief, my predecessor, saw a young man working on a ranch, he said that you basically had no choice, but I needed to be on the fire department. And I didn't want to do it. Went in and went to check it out. And actually, my first training, I saw some folks in uniform and didn't really want that to be me. You know, I wanted to kind of be a person out in the woods and do my thing, and I left. Well, he came chasing me down and brought me back to the next training, and once I got in, I was hooked. I saw the community and the people who are in the trainings and what they do, and it wasn't what I thought it was. And from then on, it was just, you know, starting to learn the basics, and then moved up and eventually took this job in this fire chief's job in 2013, and have been working with the crew since then. But it was not what I intended to do, but it's absolutely where I want to be. It's a great job.
Great, thank you. Clay.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I started as a volunteer almost 30 years ago. It was 29 years ago this month. And my neighbors, I lived over in Cape Bay Valley, over in Yolo County, and the fire station was a little red barn behind my house, and with a single engine in it. My neighbors kept driving past me full speed, you know, once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, what are you doing? And they got me into a meeting, and it's like Andres, I was hooked after that. It became a 29-year passion for me.
Great. All right. Thank you both. It's an honor to have you on. And with that, let's start with a little bit of basics about the fire district. And we didn't really designate an order here, so whoever jumps in first can jump in. But if we could get a little bit about the district and what's its function and structure, and how big is it,
Sure.
and how big an area are you serving?
Well, I'm glad Cobb's here, because he actually wrote a piece about the history of the EMS branch. And we want to kind of describe how our fire department works. And it's probably unproportionately to fire service, because it says fire department. We're actually a fire district, as well as we have an ambulance transport. which we're technically an emergency services that does both EMS transport and fire suppression. So I think I want to make a distinction there. A lot of people think that we're just a fire department, and we'll go into that a little bit with Clay and maybe Cobb can put some history there. Really interesting background on that side. So basically our district started or our fire department started in 1955, was formalized. A similar time frame for the ambulance service, 1955, but they worked along and they eventually transitioned into a governmental service, which is called the Anderson Valley Community Service District. Most people think of them as a CSD, an acronym for it, which does more than just the fire department. It is essentially anything that's in their latent powers to do. So we currently have a rec center. We provide the street lighting in town, the airport. Now we have fire services and ambulance services, and they're working on potentially doing a water sewer. So we work kind of similar to what you would think of as a city or municipal type of government, but we're just a rural special district. So we have a fire service within that. We started early on and went through a lot of transition. The fire department was on its own. We actually, from years past, heard rumors that, and I wasn't here for it, ambulance and fire did not get along. They slowly started to merge. I give a lot of credit to my predecessor, Colin Wilson, for bringing unity and making a cohesive group between the two, which set the stage for when I took this job in 2015, we were able to formally merge it, start the merging process to eventually come to fruition in 2017, where we are now one ambulance and fire department running in unity, where our volunteers who maybe were on the ambulance and on the fire side are working on one single department, and we're working as one group. So that's kind of a real short, hasty description of when we started, in 1955, running independent to now where we're running with an ambulance service. Clay, do you want to speak on the ambulance and how it was started, or maybe Cobb on the logging portion?
Bob probably knows the earlier days better than I do. I understand it was started by some logging companies who needed an emergency service. So it was, I believe it was a hearse. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you got it.
The original, pardon?
You got it, yeah.
Was the original ambulance, I think, back in 1955. In the early 70s, they became a formal nonprofit and operated as a nonprofit ever since. Then, as Andres said, in 2017, well, we started the process in 2015. I was the EMS manager at the time. Or the ambulance manager at the time for the ambulance. And we started the process of merging the two together since we always responded to the same calls. And a lot of the crew had already begun to be on both departments. So it made it a lot easier, especially after Colin did so much work in trying to encourage people getting on the ambulance from the fire and bringing some people from ambulance onto fire and vice versa. So, yeah, and it's worked out really well. We have a really solid crew now, dedicated volunteers that take 12-hour shifts and commit to being available to respond within 6 to 10 minutes on 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I would just add a little something in there just to highlight the role of technology in changing EMS, which is you go back 30 years, which is right about when the Rescue 911 system developed. And prior to that, people had landlines, especially out here. Anderson Valley Ambulance still at their office uses the landline number that was just the phone to the local market, the Anderson Valley Market. And that's who people called when they, needed an ambulance, because the folks that ran the market were a big part of that. But it's kind of incredible when you think about KZYX as well, started in 1989, and then you move, each decade can be marked by significant develops in technology, especially the internet, to where we have this pandemic and now we're all meeting on Zoom to do this show. So
And this is exactly where I was going to leap up to. Andres, did you have something you wanted to add in there before you're on mute? You're still on mute.
Speaking of technology out there,
So-
everybody.
There we go.
Good catch. So I wanted to speak a little bit on kind of the area, the geography, and the people that we serve. The district initially started with a much smaller district. It was Boonville, Philo, and Navarro. And over the years, I believe in the 70s, they annexed Yorkville, maybe in the late 70s. Don't quote me on that. And then eventually Rancho Navarro, and made the district much larger as far as the physical boundaries to basically 156 square miles, which that sounds pretty big, but when you think of Mendocino County as a whole, there's a lot of real estate in this county, and we just cover a small portion of it. But the interesting thing about it is 156 square miles is our legal district, but we actually serve 336 square miles. Why the discrepancy? Where our legal district boundaries go to a certain area, but there's a no man's land the between the fire districts. There's a lot of districts that aren't contiguous. There's just a no fire department in that area, and we're going to come to you no matter what. So local fire agencies are responding into areas that aren't in their legal district just to make sure people are served, no matter what, if they call 911. So we divide our district up into 3 battalions in order to cover this huge area. We consider them east, central, and west, even though our district kind of goes in a more of a northerly direction. But what we do is we divide them up. So our volunteers, even though we have a really full roster of anywhere from 45 plus people, we divide them up into these 3 groups, these 3 battalions. And, you may have 10 responders in one area, 15 in another, or, however they get distributed. But when you think about who's in your area, who's at work, who's not, who's sick, who's traveling, we don't have a ton of people, but we have enough to cover the district. We work in almost a mutual aid system in our district. So if something's happening, say, Rancho Navarro, and there's not a lot of people coming, the Boonville people would come and assist that battalion with their responses. And Yorkville would even move up to cover Boonville. So we do a lot of covering in order to cover this large area, especially in this linear kind of geography, or this map that we have. So we have a little bit of a challenge, and I think all departments in Mendocino County have similar issues with the large areas that they cover with so few volunteers. So it just is a testimony to the commitment troops have to covering such a vast area.
And we'll probably loop back to that because, in this disaster-prone and larger disaster hosting environment that we live in, you get pulled further and further out as well. So we'll loop back to that, but we touched on that we're on Zoom and that we're in the midst of COVID. And before we get too far from that, since I think a lot of people are interested in that, I wanted to loop back and sort of touch base on what you've had to do to adapt to that. We've spent a year with it. It's changed a lot of things. So if you could talk a bit about how you've had to adapt to the pandemic and what kind of support you got and what kind of support you might have actually still need going forward to make it work.
That's going to be you, Clay.
It's going to be me. How have we adapted to the pandemic? Well, we've done a lot more. Originally, we stopped training in person in the original. As it went a little bit further, we started taking precautions. We found that the Zoom training was not completely effective, so we still needed to have some participation with each other and get some hands-on so that people weren't getting rusty. But we started taking precautions in terms of changing where we trained. We moved out into the app bay and we quit bringing people inside the station itself for training. And then we practice a lot of social distancing. And inside there, and everybody during training is always masked up. In terms of calls, when we went out to start responding to calls, it became a concern for us that we weren't really clear who was who may be exposed or have COVID or not have COVID. So we started establishing certain protocols limiting our patient contacts to less and less people, so that, our system is very much everybody shows up. What we were trying to avoid was making sure only the pertinent people were making patient contacts, and being very careful about transport and maintaining personal protective equipment during transport.
I would add to that the swine flu and those earlier things in I think it was mid 2000s created a healthy supply for PPE in our department.
Right.
We had a good stockpile of N95s. We had quite a bit of just regular PPE gloves and things of that nature, even some suits for that matter. And so on the initial phases of this, when everything was drawn down, we were healthy with that in the initial phases. Things have caught up with it, but it gave our troops the proper safety equipment to get out there and get things done. And we said earlier with this weird geography, if the ambulance is coming from Boonville and we have someone in Rancho Navarro, a good 20, 25-minute drive, we're not going to delay patient care. So that means we need to give those troops the PPE they need to do interactions as necessary before the ambulance gets there. So that meant a larger load of PPE needed to be distributed, and we were fortunate to have those stockpiles in our storage that we were able to get to the troops and keep it safe. So I think we were fortunate on that front to have the right equipment.
That's great, and I understand that. I think this will be a relief to a lot of people that we're sort of coming around, and that the inoculations are actually coming to the department as we speak. Yeah.
So I'm happy to say that today we're going to be going down to the health center, both Clay and I, and about 10 of our troops, possibly 12 tops, are going to get our Pfizer vaccination today. 30 of our volunteers will be getting them. Some more will be getting them in other locations, or won't get them for other reasons. But 30 of our troops, mostly ambulance folks and general staff and frequent responders, will be getting those. So today, I will be getting my shot around noon, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm happy to jump on board and get that. So we're finally getting some rollout. I know the health center is getting theirs as well, but this will be the first phase of rollout in the Anderson Valley. And we're happy to participate.
That's awesome. It's good to hear that it's actually getting out into Mendocino and getting to all parts of Mendocino, hopefully.
Right.
It's great news.
If you just tuned in, you're listening to KZYX. This is Mendocino Fire Safe Radio. Your host is Mendocino County Fire Safe Council Director Scott Craddy, and we are joined with two guests from the Anderson Valley Fire Department, Chief Andres Avila and Medical Officer Clay Eubank.
Okay, getting back into it, just to sort of paint a broader picture of, like to touch base on kind of what the range of things you do are. I know there's probably a lot more than I know, but you're doing medical first response, you're doing fire, you're sort of doing fire prevention and mitigation planning, you're doing building inspections. I know you've participated with the Fire Safe Council on community education. I mean, that's a huge range as it is. If you could talk about how many things you're coordinating, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think everything has been just tweaked with this COVID, but we try to participate as much as we can in prevention and outreach, and that is that interaction that we have been essentially, stopped during this COVID. We can't get out as much as we'd like, but what we do is we've broken up our department as anybody who's. We have prevention, we have actual response, and then we have our day-to-day operations. So everything from maintenance, in our office work, budgets, just general management. And then what we've done from there is our different branches that get out to either the public or to our volunteers have been divided up. So Clay's job is he's the EMS officer. He's the emergency medical services officer. But he also does prevention, and prevention would be things that have to do with fire code. He's going to go out and start doing routine inspections for the schools, for certain places of high occupancy, hazardous areas, things of that nature. So Clay kind of has a dual role here in the department, as well as responding and things of that nature. We also have Angela DeWitt, and she has become our training officer, and her job is, well, training. And, with this whole COVID spin, we're really having to rethink the way we do business, as Clay alluded to earlier. So she's doing that, as well as she does public outreach. So she's trying to work with people on a lot of these prevention things, working with people's houses, where you put hydrants at, how do you clear your roads, and really getting out with, site owner, residents and people who are building things of that nature in order to, give the community what they need. So we've kind of delegated the roles between Angela and Clay and myself. But as a whole, we try to be as proactive as possible during our non-response times, because anything we do now is essentially assisting people when the disaster comes. And if we get ahead of it, we're doing the right job.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to sort of offer my thanks. I know you helped us a lot get ahead of things with the Fire Safe Council has a chipper now, and the Anderson Valley Fire Department in particular was a tremendous help helping us organize, getting it out there in use, helping organize places that it was needed in the community. We even partnered a bit with your maintenance department in helping it keep it maintained, and I believe it's parked over with maybe some of your gear at the fairgrounds at the moment. So there was kind of a huge level of community engagement and outreach in helping us put all that together.
Yeah, I would say thank you to the Fire Safe Council on that one. That was a tremendous grant that came this way. Family Tree did a wonderful job. They were the ones who were actually running it, and they came to the PG&E grant. But, I think we had 40 plus residents who all benefited from chipping, and these were large pots that we got chipped away, and we saw a lot. I know the community was very thankful. They sent on a lot of thank yous and appreciation to you guys for that chipper program. And we'd like to continue doing that with future grants down the road. So those kind of activities are going to help people. They're going to help slow fire. They're going to help fire suppression efforts. They're going to help with egress. They're going to help around your structure to save your structure. So the more things that we do like that, whether it be chipping, burning, just, basic fuel reduction, is going to help the community. So any of those programs we will be engaging in as many as possible.
So I'm going to go back to mutual aid for a moment. So we brought up that, so you've got a few people, a core of volunteers, and 336 square miles to cover, which is kind of overwhelming to begin with. But on top of that, there's local departments get drawn into this network of mutual aid, all kinds of levels. I know you, Andres, ended up in Southern California at some point this year. Could you guys tell us a bit about, where you've ended up through this and how that works, given all that you've got to cover? How do you end up helping other things and keeping the home fires not burning?
Sure. But you want me to take that, or do you like it?
You could take that one.
Okay. So basically, the mutual aid system is basically how the fire service works. We will always come when someone, a neighbor, calls, and we always think of fires. But this could be an earthquake. This could be a tsunami. We think of fires because that's what we generally are seeing these days. But it basically is for anything that overwhelms our neighbor. Wildfire is under the jurisdiction of CAL FIRE. So they are going to be the ones who essentially have jurisdiction and run the incident. And as things escalate and maybe get past their capacity, you then, or CAL FIRE, or that what we call incident management team, would request for additional resources to augment that incident. This could be anything. The Orville Dam was something that was a large incident that people assisted with. So it's a mutual aid system on any emergency. As they request more resources, fire departments will send the certified individuals to go do that. So it could be, firefighters. It could be people to help run the incident. It could be water tenders. It could be, search and rescue. Whatever it may be, the mutual aid system augments the need of their neighbors. So CAL FIRE is essentially requesting that local fire departments come out to these fires. And then from there, if it gets drawn out further, they may even hire contractors, private, individuals or groups to come in and help. So we get sucked into this system because we want to go out and help our neighbors. When we get a call, we want people to come help us. So we participate by sending primarily wildland engines out to what we call campaign fires or strike teams. So when something happens down south, you mentioned that I left you. We would go out on a fire. I think it was the LA fire. It was called the Apple Fire. That's what I initially got sent out on, and went with a whole county's team. There was 5 engines from Mendocino County and 1 leader that went out and went down to Southern California. I was a part of that team. And then we got diverted over to the Stagecoach in Kern County. We were out for, 2 weeks or a week and a half, whatever it may be, and then came home. And throughout the summer, these deployments happened. So I believe that Mendocino County as a whole was out for 3 months, maybe longer, with a variety. And you'd have to talk to our OES coordinator on the exact numbers here. But almost all, if not all, of our fire departments participate in some shape or form with a water tender or with overhead or with an engine or more during the August complex and the Brook Trails incident. I think that was the Oak Fire. And what we do is we all kind of send out. Not everybody can send out of county, but when it comes down to in the county, there's a tremendous support from fire departments. I know that we saw it in the Redwood Valley complex this summer, where all of our fire departments jump in and help our neighbors. So that's kind of the deal. Is as the need goes, we support. So it's just a growing and expanding mutual aid, and then as things slow down and get under control, they start to shed the load and bring people back to their district. So that's kind of the mutual aid system as a whole. We do participate in it, and it brings a ton of experience to our firefighters that then they can be even more effective when something starts in our district. So we participate for those reasons.
Well,
I would add that it's not just local fire departments going out to these big campaigns. There's a lot of smaller local departments that actually staff CAL FIRE stations when the stations are drawn down to the point where CAL FIRE's resources are spread throughout the entire state. You'll have a lot of local departments that will actually man stations 24/7, CAL FIRE stations, to help support them. I know that CompTIA was over in Woodland manning Ukiah manning the Ukiah station for a period of time. And so that's another element of the support that we can provide. And the whole thing is managed by the Office of Emergency Services, OES, who acts as kind of our liaison with the state.
Well, and that's just not the core of the department. That's also like the volunteers that are having to juggle their work schedules and lives to somehow make that happen.
Yes.
Yeah. We had some of our crews that were out, for 2 months plus. And what that means is, yes, that's a deployment. That's a long time away from home. But you leave your job. You're leaving your source of income, which is a real big jump, a hurdle for some of our folks. And, we as a district don't have a lot of upfront money to just pay them forward. So they're waiting for the check. We haven't even received the checks yet for some of these fires. That means that they went out without being paid to assist these fires with paychecks still yet to come. And that's a big sacrifice for these troops to do. But I know that they enjoy it. They learn a lot. And, when the paycheck comes, it's a good paycheck. But they do sacrifice by leaving. And that's another tribute to them.
I have a question, which is, Clay, could you speak to, it might not be technically mutual aid, but the partnerships that exist for medical aids in terms of ALS with Ukiah Ambulance and CalStar and how that works?
There is an EMS system in play, an overall EMS system. So we offer BLS services, which is basic life support, which means that our ambulances have an EMT and a driver on there. So we can do a certain level of medical care. At some point, though, the patient may require services greater than what we can provide. So, for instance, some medications, we can't provide medication. If it's a significant trauma injury, we need to pass those on to more advanced care. And so when we receive a dispatch for a medical aid, if it's what we call an Alpha or a Bravo, we may not get that ALS dispatched with us automatically. But if we get a more significant call, something that's life-threatening, like a cardiac or difficulty breathing, they will dispatch an ALS unit from either Fort Bragg or Ukiah, whichever is closer, to respond to the call along with us. And it's also a helicopter, which can be dispatched depending on weather, with us as well. So then we will go in as the first responder, and if we deem it necessary, then we will transfer care to a higher medical authority, like a paramedic ambulance, or take them to a helicopter so that they can fly them out.
Cool. That's an amazing operation. And at that point, maybe it's a good point to turn a little bit to the nuts and bolts about, how does that keep happening? You got a lot of vehicles, you got a lot of EMS equipment, you've got a lot of it's just expensive. So let's look at that for a minute. I mean, how do you manage to keep that together? What keeps it funded?
So, nobody really wants to hear people, cry about money, but this is really a money topic. We run on a very slim budget. We have the fire department running under more or less tax revenues. The CSD is a government, so we do take in some property taxes. In 1998, the community voted in Measure A, which is the benefit assessment for residents in the district, which goes to fire suppression services. We can't use it for EMS, and that more or less those two are the bulk of our fire department budget. And it's enough to keep things afloat. Strike teams do bring in revenues that assist us as well. That is an advantage of going out. But we run our district on $350,000, which a lot of that is insurance and things of that nature. But we're able to keep 3 staff full-time paid and keep the wheels turning. Maintenance, all the different things we need to do. So I think we're making it. It definitely is not a flush budget by any means, but we will not complain because we are able to continue. On the EMS side, it's a much trickier animal. This is based on billing. We literally have to make enough money off our services of transport in order to keep this in the black. We are currently seeing a deficit right now. We have ways that we're going to backfill it, but with the COVID, we're actually seeing less transports. We have a membership drive that fills in a large portion of it, but we do rely on transporting people. And with less transports and heavily relying on ALS rendezvous, as in someone coming from Ukiah that we transfer to, we can't bill. And what we're seeing is a real heavy shortfall this year. That we're having to be creative on plugging the gap for. For the community in Anderson Valley, there is no reason to think that we're going to lose these services. By all means, they will continue, but it's becoming a harder and harder challenge for us on the EMS branch. So that's Clay's department, but it's been extremely difficult this year. but we are working on the backs of volunteers. That's the other major part, is we would not be able to do this whatsoever if we had to pay staff. We have volunteers coming in on 12-hour shifts, and there's 2 people per ambulance shift. So that means 4 volunteers per day, 24/7, 365. That keeps this thing afloat. And to pay that staff, we just would not be able to balance the books. So I think that's kind of the view on how we keep things going. And I don't know, Clay, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. The membership is huge. It covers a huge percentage of our revenues to help keep things going. But another element also, and I want to say, is the ALS funding we're getting from the county itself. That gives us enough money to be able to stipend our volunteers per shift. It doesn't pay them per se, but it gives them a $30 per shift stipend just to hang out here for 12 hours, which I think is a huge way of saying, hey, you're not wasting your time with us, or, it's not costing you money to be here to volunteer for us. We have people that are coming from Comchi, 3 volunteers from Comchi, 1 from Albion that comes over to support the ambulance service as a volunteer. So it's, I think that's another additional important revenue stream.
Can I speak to that for just a moment?
Go ahead.
Because I'm sure we'll be making a pitch for volunteers, but we talked a little bit about funding, and I can speak, as a volunteer for the ambulance fire service, KZYX, previously being on paid staff for the ambulance a bit, part of the paid staff with the Fire Safe Council. And what amazes me is that all through history, dating back to when we mentioned the 50s earlier in the show, what really makes the funding pale in comparison is volunteers. And it's the intersection here with the Fire Safe Council and all these departments is the neighbors, helping neighbors with initial response to keep these incidents small, or to identify them early, or to potentially hold the line until some of these higher up structures that have more resources available can show up. But the amount of funding that comes from the county, or comes from ambulance memberships, or any of it, your memberships as a listener calling into KZYX, literally pales in comparison to the efforts of neighbors helping neighbors, volunteers in their home areas participating however they can. Sometimes that's with money by being a member, but really, volunteers throughout the whole history have done this, and it's easily, a logarithmic exponential scale greater contribution that almost can't be quantified, that keeps the Fire Safe Council going, that keeps the ambulance and fire services and radio station going. So if you're out there listening and you participate, give yourself a pat on the back. And if you haven't yet, you'll find out that there's so many ways you can that are actually really fun and rewarding.
We will actually get back to volunteering momentarily. Just to piggyback on that a second, Cobb, that's an awesome point. Quick commercial for the Fire Safe Council. That's one of the things we're about, is trying to activate as many neighborhood councils and as many groups of neighbors to get involved and do some of the pre-work so that situations don't get as bad, and you have a good organized network. And Anderson Valley's got a lot of good ones already going. And as I understand it at the moment, the sort of overarching Anderson Valley Neighborhood Fire Safe Council structure is looking for a new leader at the moment. So if somebody's out there interested in stepping up, there's a great opportunity, and you can get in touch with us about that. Before we go on to what it takes to be a volunteer and such, you've both mentioned the membership thing, and I want to make sure we let people understand what that is. So could you tell us a little bit about what it means to become a member?
Yeah, the membership program we are partnered with CalSTAR or REACH. It's actually MedAir. And what the membership program does, it's $125 a year per household. It's not per individual. And it helps support the ambulance service. We generate about $40,000 worth. We have 500 households that are members, and it generates roughly about $40,000 annually for us. The membership itself it's not an insurance. What it does is it says that we will bill your insurance, and if there is a copay, you are not responsible for any copay that comes out of that. So you won't be responsible for anything additional. And for those who are on Medicare or Medi-Cal, I don't believe we can bill Medi-Cal. But if there is a Medicare element in there and Medicare doesn't pay the balance, then you won't either, because you are a member with us. The other element of it is the helicopter, CalStar and Reach. The same thing applies for CalStar and Reach as well. And so a portion of that $125 goes to MedAir, and then you become a member of them for a year as well. And it's a way to kind of join the two together. So if you are on one and not the other, you can come in and join us as a package deal that helps support our organization, the ambulance service.
Great. Hey, thanks for the clarification. So we've talked a lot about volunteers, and I'd like to focus in on that for a second, get a little sense of what it takes if somebody's heard this and is thinking, I'd like to get involved in that.
Well, if I may
what are
interrupt,
the first steps?
yeah, just to segue that, can you give some contact information out, especially for your websites, all three of you, for membership or volunteer interest?
So for Anderson Valley, you can just go to andersonvalleyfire.org, andersonvalleyfire.org. There's an EMS section that can show you memberships. There's a way to how to become a volunteer, even some prevention materials, things of that. But everything that you'd want to find would be right there. So that would be our access point. It gives you facts, an FAQ sheet on all the details you're asking about. How much time is it, things of that nature. So there's a lot in that portal, if you will, to see how you can get in. You can download an application. You can see if it's for you, what group you can be in, EMS or fire or both. If you want to just drive a water tender because maybe you don't want to go into a burning building kind of deal. You don't want to hike up a hill with 300 feet of inch and a half on your back. There are other ways to get involved. Everything from, we have a PIO, a public information officer, who volunteers. She doesn't go on calls. There's different ways to support. And if you go into that portal, you can kind of see, hey, this is kind of my way of doing it. So we break it down into groups, and we try to fit what you can do to not exclude you if you can't do all of it. So we try to bring it in as a group or a stacking method.
If you look at for the membership program, if you look at our website, it's listed on a drop down under payments.
Well, then how about you, Scott Craddy, with the Fire Safe Council?
So for the Fire Safe Council, our website is firesafemendocino.org, and we do also have memberships, so other membership opportunity there. But there's also just a tremendous lot of information. We've been building our website pretty heavily over the last year. So if you wanted to see what neighborhood fire safe councils are out there, to see if there's one near you already, we've got a map that's got them pinned that you can zoom in and look at. If there's not one there, then there's some information about how to start one. And there's also just a tremendous lot of basic information, including these radio shows. And what we've been plugging heavily lately is we just completed a really extensive series of videos about home hardening. So there's a ton of educational material there that really breaks down home hardening step by step into small little bits, and it's prioritized. So it tells you where to start first, and you can move on down. And if you only have 5 minutes, we've got a short version, so you can check the 5-minute version of what to do about your roof this weekend. and go start doing some of it. And if you want to know why, you can watch the 20-minute version that gives you some more detail. But anyway, so we have a tremendous amount of information there. Also, you can order your reflective signs to make it easier for first responders to find you. Hopefully, we'll have a little time to talk about the issue of roads and naming coming up, which is a big one. But yeah, that's how to get information about us. Let's see. And volunteers. So we talked about that. I just talked a little bit about prep. I wanted to turn that back to you two and see if there are things that you would want to talk to the folks in the Anderson Valley about what they would be doing to get ready for next season at this point.
So there's a lot of things that people can do. I'm a big proponent for burning. I love burning. I guess that's the fire side of me. But if you do it right and you do it safely and you do it under a permit, they basically burning is a great technique in order to get rid of things quickly. We can kind of go into the parameters of that if you'd like, but burning is a really good way. Getting that that pile, burning it, getting rid of it is one. We talked about the chipper program, chipping stuff and putting some biomass on the ground and reusing it for certain things helps with erosion. You can keep soil moistures up, things of that nature. And you don't have to go through all the burning if you don't like the burning side of things or the smoke. There are things of that nature you can get rid of. But basically, now is the time to reduce the fuels for next summer. So you're not going to be able to cut and burn things in July when things start getting really primed for wildfire. So you got to be doing it ahead. One of the things I learned on the ranch is you always need to be at least a season ahead of any task that you're doing. So right now we need to be getting ready for summer. It seems like we just got done with summer, so you want to take a break, but you got to kind of jump on it. So basically, between the chipping and the burning are two really easy ones. Helping your neighbor out, working with them if they are elderly or maybe have some special needs. What is it that they have that they may need from you or the neighbors as a group, and some of those communities can pull together for them. Another one we're seeing is road networking, phone trees, and making sure that everyone gets information in a timely manner. But setting these kinds of things up now will basically, you'll be prepared. You'll be set up for when summer comes. These things take time, between deferral and just all the work that goes into it. So don't think that there's a lot of time. Think that this is the time to start.
Well, you just mentioned burn piles, and earlier you'd said there are a lot of calls coming in about burn permits and the situation with that now. Would you like to take a moment to give some clarification for folks?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This one's going to be a little bit, hopefully I can create a clear picture, and it may take a minute or two. Basically, there's a couple jurisdictions that you have kind of their hands into burning. The first is air quality, and the second is your local fire agency. We go through a couple different tiers of burning during the winter. It's called winter burning season. And that's more or less the jurisdiction of that is air quality. They're looking at not the fire side of things, but the smoke management, and is it healthy to be burning on that specific day. They're looking at things like inversion layers. Is the smoke going to settle back in and impact your neighbor? Is it going to be windy and maybe disperse the smoke? Is there other things going on in the area that may have bad air quality and you don't want to add to it? So they're kind of looking at it from that perspective. So during winter burning season, they're the ones who more or less are the only people who have their hands in the pot as far as jurisdiction. As you move towards the spring and fire becomes more of a hazard, you start to increase your permits, if you will. So CAL FIRE starts their fire season, is what they call it. It's their fire season restrictions on May 1st. And at that point, you would need a CAL FIRE permit on top of your air quality. It's because they have more strict stipulations. So the strictest stipulation always, supersedes the other one. So you're going to need to get a CAL FIRE burn permit. That's online, and they restrict you to 4x4 and smaller. That goes on for a period of time until the unit says, hey, it's too dangerous to be burning. We're going to put in what's called the burn ban, and that's just no burning whatsoever. And that basically shuts it down during wildfire season. On the backside of the cycle, in the winter or the fall, you see it go back into fire season, and CAL FIRE still requires you to have a burn permit. That's what we're in today. Today is CAL FIRE's jurisdiction. We're told this Sunday, CAL FIRE will remove their restrictions and will go back into winter burning season. So today you would need a CAL FIRE burn permit. Next Monday, you would not, and all you would need is an air quality burn permit. So if you followed all of that, there's different jurisdictions that kind of have their requirements, and we're about ready to transition into next week air qualities, which means you need a burn permit if you're burning anything over 4x4, and that's, you can get that online. You pay, I think it's $19, and you should be able to obtain one and burn until April 30th. So that's kind of the quick and hasty version of that. People get very confused on it, rightfully so. But that's it. If you want to start burning in winter burning season, you're opened up this Monday.
Are there any online resources as far as with air quality or the fire department that outline the instruction manual you just verbalized?
Yes. So it's funny. We just had a online discussion about this with air quality and our supervisor last Friday. If you go to air quality, Mendocino County Air Quality Management District, you go into the burning tab. They have a description of these different tiers, if you will, the winter burning season and the responsibilities and jurisdiction. And at the bottom, they also have your online application. The one caveat, because this is a countywide radio show, is that if you are in a local fire department's jurisdiction that does not have CAL FIRE, such as maybe Willits or Ukiah, some of these areas, and you need to check your local fire department's restrictions, they may have a slightly different requirements than CAL FIRE does. So if you are in a city or one of those local response areas, you may have slightly different stipulations.
We are getting close to the end, so I don't know if we'll have time for interesting stories or not, but I did want to ask you, I know the department gets a lot of support from the community and has a lot of great community engagement, but if you wanted to use the last little bit of time to get some word out about what other support you could use and what message you'd like to get to people, what would it be?
Clay, I just want to jump in and basically say that the heartbeat of what we do is the volunteer. There's no way to dispute that. Everything that we do is based on their efforts. So if the community, doesn't have financial or, volunteering hours to contribute, if you see someone in a volunteer fire t-shirt, or they have that pager kind of stowed away underneath their jacket and you're in passing at the coffee store, wherever you may be, just let them know you appreciate it. Thanks for doing what you're doing. That goes a long ways, to know that the community appreciates you. And, just a simple thank you, that does a lot. We always want more volunteers and things of that nature. We want you guys to know that we are working for you. We're the public servants and we're here for your service. But if you can support by just letting that person that that's on the fire department or on the ambulance, just say thanks. I think that is a huge morale booster, and it just shows that the community supports them.
Clay, did you want to add anything there?
I would just second what Andres is saying. The volunteers are a huge part. We couldn't do what we do without the volunteers, the people who commit to basically drop everything in their day, no matter what they're doing, and just run when the pager goes off to help support their neighbors. And I don't think that can be understated, not just in Anderson Valley, but in the entire county. The vast majority of this county are volunteers and volunteer departments that rely on people just like your neighbors out there who are out there jumping in and serving their community, because that's what they do.
Great. And I'm not sure if we have time for another question or not. We might just want to loop back to contact information. I was going to go to sort of what priorities are for the next season, but I don't think we have time to go there. So I'm going to do a quick loop back to where you can find out more about the Fire Safe Council, which is firesafemendocino.org. A ton of resources there, contact info. We try to get something going on the blog at least every week. So there's new content and we're loading new video all the time as well. And with that, let me turn it back to Andres and Clay to provide information for people who want to find out more about what you do.
So if you want to just jump onto Anderson Valley Fire's website at andersonvalleyfire.org, hopefully you can see a lot there. There are people who are wanting to know what calls go on in Anderson Valley. I know that this is a request from the community during fire season. I hear sirens. Does that mean I need to evacuate? If you want to quickly look on our website, you can see if it's a medical aid, and you can if it's a wildfire, things of that nature. There's a lot of little links on that website that might be advantageous to you, including Everbridge. Please get signed up for Everbridge and get your evacuation notices and things of that nature if you haven't already done so. So just go explore it, see what you can find on there. There's a lot on our website, andersonvalleyfire.org.